You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Fuel retailers today face one of the biggest questions related to their forecourts in decades. How do you model if you want to have EV charging in your stores? Which stores? What kind of EV charging? And a whole bunch of other things. A lot of questions. We have some answers for you today. Joining us today to talk about EV chargers, what you need to know, what you need to think about, what does the future look like for you related to EVs, is Karl Doenges. He is Executive Director of the Charging Analytics Program, which is part of the Transportation Energy Institute, and looking at what are things of interest to charging. So thanks for joining us today, Karl.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
So for those not familiar with the Transportation Energy Institute, it was a spinoff from NACS about 11 years ago. 1 year ago, changed its name from the Fuels Institute, which was more of a fuels focus, to Transportation Energy Institute, which is perfect timing because we're talking about energy here, but it's charging, not necessarily fuel. So first off, let's talk a little bit about the importance of looking at EV charging and how CAP, the Charging Analytics Program, came about.
You bet. What happened is we had a lot of retailers that I was working with at NACS and over at TEI, and there was a reoccurring theme, and they needed hard data to make decisions or timing, when, how, what to do EV charging, and the vendors had a lot of solutions and quote unquote data that came out of a black box, and they didn't know where it came from, whether it was reliable. And the number one issue with EV charging is, are you picking the right spot, and is it going to have adequate throughput, and what's that throughput going to be? And that drives everything. And the numbers that the vendors were giving weren't necessarily correct. And if they wanted to go to an independent research body that had this, an analytics firm, the costs were astronomical. And even then, they were giving their projections and using algorithms to predict what the throughput would be. And so we had quite a few retailers come to us and say, hey, we got a problem here. We don't have the tools we need to make a decision. And they asked us to step in and see if we could create a platform that was bring everyone together to share the cost, to bring the cost down, but also give real data in a very transparent and open way, and get insights from that data so they could make real business decisions. And what the companies out there were doing is they were giving their projections using algorithms and weighting them in different ways and forecasting. What we did is, like, this industry is changing so rapidly. These projections are mercurial at best. We said we're going to go with hard data. And we went out and we found, but we were aggregating and pulling in over 2 million charging sessions every month. And we got all the data from that, and that number is going to grow exponentially. And we're bringing in, we're crunching the number to not sit there and say, this is what we think is going to happen. We like to go to our members and say, this is what's happening. And that was the evolution of the whole charging analytics program.
And it's much more sophisticated than just even a couple of years ago when people would say, well, how come you're not putting in charging? And I remember the first time I saw a charger at a store, the guy pointed it out to me and he says, that's my most expensive coat rack I have. Now, he wasn't laughing. I thought it was funny. I also was thinking coat racks really don't have a place outdoors, but it obviously wasn't working for him. And really, one size doesn't fit all. So I think that's also a key driver in looking at the charging analytics program, is determining what might work for you, where might charging work, what type of charging, what is the customer base, and you can look at all these different things with your charging experiences. Talk a little bit more about how you collect charging experiences and what is shared and what isn't shared.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up in that example, and it's not uniform across the United States, and even within a certain demographic area, it's not uniform. And one size does not fit all. And what we've been able to do is we bring in all the data, and then you can, first of all, just flat out on geography, you can say, hey, this is where the EV registrations are spiking. This is where the miles are being driven. This is where the charging sessions are happening, and it's not happening over here. Then that allows us to start working backwards and peeling back and filtering and slicing and dicing and saying, what's underneath it? What's causing that? And you can see, you can get insights such as, well, in an urban area and a state that has a lot of vehicles sold and has really pushed EVs, or even hasn't pushed EVs in the state of Texas and Florida, you see these areas where it's really booming. And then you can kind of derive from some of the data by looking at the housing type, like, well, gee whiz, well, people that are in urban areas or affluent suburban areas, especially in the bigger cities, they're completely fine with having all their vehicles or one vehicle be an EV. You get out into suburbia where you got kids and stuff, and they're fine with one vehicle being an EV, but not the other one. And then you get into areas like Florida, and you find Florida and Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, and you find issues of resiliency and fuel diversity because of a hurricane kind of playing into the psychology. And so it's not one size fits all. And then you get up in the North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, where they want a big truck and they want to be able to haul that truck, several hundred miles, and the offerings on the EV side are just not there. And so one size does not fit all. And what you can do is you can go into the analytics platform and you can start to say, okay, what are areas we have a benchmarking, to use terms that are very familiar with members of NACS. We kind of mimicked what Lori did over at SOI, and we created benchmarking capabilities. And so they can come in and say, okay, I want to find areas that are like me. And I want to know what's it look like and what's the trend line look like. So when is the right time for me to jump in? What is the right offering that I need to have as far as the power level? Do I want to do this and own it myself and control the brand, the image, and the quality? Or would I rather let Tesla or Mercedes-Benz come in and put their own charging program in, and I'm just the site host, and my job is to convert them into the store and turn that into sales? We give them the tools, and I can get if you need help sleeping, I can get as granular as you want on this. But we give them the tools to peel back those layers and saying, okay, not only are the EVs in my area, and is there a deficit or of charging infrastructure, and even within that, the right type of charging infrastructure. Especially, you can look at just C stores and say, I want to filter out. I don't care about grocery stores and other people. I just want to know, are the C stores in these areas is there enough considering all the EV registrations that are in that area, and start making the decisions like, you know what, I'm behind the eight ball. I got to get something going right now because I'm losing customers, or it's coming. I need to get on this, or I've got time. But if I'm building a new store, I definitely want to go ahead and future-proof this thing and build it all out, because it's 8x the cost to go back and bust up concrete and retrofit something.
Even more than that in California in terms of cracking concrete. So,
yes.
which is of course a prime EV location, and that's where they're pushing 2035. No more fuels vehicles being sold in the state. So you definitely do not want to be cracking concrete and going through that permitting process in California.
Very true.
So you also, you alluded to Lori and SOI. Lori Stillman heads up our research team, and SOI, for those less familiar, is the NACS State of the Industry suite of products. It's the report, it's the summit, it's all those things. So bringing this program in line with how do we think as an industry about all the other things that go through cash register in all those equivalencies used in the SOI suite of products. Was there anything that surprised you that you thought, oh, it's so obvious, and then you looked at the data, as you said, millions of occasions a month, and something just jumped out at you that said, oh, I did not see that coming.
Oh, man.
That was not what I had been led to believe.
Where do I begin? We've been surprised quite a bit. Some very weird things that when you just start looking at the data, you really do get surprised. One of the first things we do is we really try to find what are the key indicators or data points that are highest correlated to utilization rate of a charger. And there's some very obvious ones: EV registration, then demographic, population density, things like this are very strongly correlated with the utilization rate. But then there's some things you would never predict. And the one thing that came up, I believe was the number 5 factor when we overlaid and looked at the highest correlated data points that correlated to high utilization rates, it was public parks, adjacency to public parks. And it's just that you would never, I would have never predicted that in a million years. But those are the odd things you kind of find when you start peeling back the data points. There's numerous other things. Another one is the power level of chargers. When we started peeling back the data layers to see what the utilization rates were versus on how strong the charger was, we kind of broke it down and from 0 to 50 kilowatt power level charger, then 50 to I believe 100 to 200, and 200 to 3 plus, or something like that. And one of the things that we found was, the utilization rates, the highest preponderance of chargers are the around 150 to 200 kilowatt, and but they do not have the highest dwell time. And what's odd is the 300 kilowatt plus, which is the most powerful, fastest charger, had the highest utilization rate and the highest dwell time. And that's counterintuitive. And you have to really start peeling back. Well, why is the fastest, most powerful charger have the longest dwell times? And then then you get the aha moments like, well, of course, maybe those new chargers are going in on highways and people are driving longer distances and they're needing a more full charge, or they're starting from a more depleted state. And then the other thing that we found out was, oh, wait a second, just because the charger is capable of this doesn't mean the vehicle can accept that. And they may have an older vehicle that only accepts up to 150 kilowatt or even 100 kilowatt, but they want the sexy new charger, and they're going over there, and this is where consumer education is really important. A big part of what we try to do with our retailers is explain the dynamics, and people go in there and they think they're going to plug that car and they're going to get fully charged in 15 minutes, and like, no, the vehicle doesn't matter which charger you're on, it's still throttled back to that 100 kilowatt level. And so they're at that super fast charger, but they're still going along at the same pace as they were previously. So those are the kinds of things that you find. Then you got to start peeling back and saying, why in the world is this happening?
So going back to the public parks, I think that's a really interesting point, like an aha. And this is about public parks, but not about public parks. Were the chargers that were being used by the public parks at a traditional fueling station, or were these in the parking lots of the parks? And I'm just asking because what might be some opportunities that a traditional fuel retailer could maybe take advantage of that had no idea existed?
We haven't really looked at that. But that being said, when you look at charging in urban and suburban areas, there's very few publicly owned chargers. They're there. Every now and then the utilities will have it. The preponderance are privately owned. And without question, when you look at the data, the highest utilized chargers are C-store chargers. And it goes back to it goes back to the amenities, which is what the public park is. It's an amenity. But when you go back and you look at the global survey that TEI did, and we surveyed EV drivers and site hosts in EU, Canada, and the United States. And without question, the drivers were very loud and clear that they wanted amenities. They did not want to be sitting there forever. They wanted amenities while they're sitting there with nothing to do. They wanted the amenities. They wanted food. They wanted prepared food. The QSR. They wanted drinks. They wanted snacks. But above that, they wanted security. The top items they wanted were things that had to do with safety and security. But public parks there was some comments like that in the survey, in the sense that they need to get out and stretch their legs. And if it was going to take them 20 to 30 minutes to charge, especially if they're a fully depleted battery, then they just, they could sit in the car and as an EV driver, I can tell you this, you could sit in that car and watch Netflix and YouTube, absolutely. But if you're on a road trip, especially, or if you've been driving around town all day, the last thing you want to do is keep sitting in that seat. You want to get around and move. And having that public space is a big deal, especially if you've got a pet with you, which a lot of the road trippers have.
So when you collect information in millions of occasions a month, is it anonymized? What do people that are in the program see and not see related to the
That's a
charging?
great question. So we capture failure rates. And because we capture failure rates, we absolutely do not give site-specific location because we're here to help everyone get better and to get insights and to improve the ecosystem and the business. So we have two ways of doing it. You can go into the knowledge-based platform and you can just go in there and you can drill all the way down to about the city level, maybe a little tighter within a city, and you can start getting data and then you can start sub-segmentating it into, all right, I just want to look at convenience chargers, or I just want to look at grocers, I just want to look at QSR. And then even within that, I just want to know the sites that have 150 kilowatt and 300 up kilowatt chargers. So you can start doing that, but you're going to get it to that city level about, because that means it's statistically significant. So we don't have anomalies that throw things off, and then you can start understanding. Hey, this is the time of day people are charging. This is the days of week that people charge. It's Saturday is the highest, Friday and Sunday booking are the other highest, and it drops during the weekdays. Very consistent in the data, and noon and 1 p.m. always the highest time for some reason, which is you wouldn't think that. That's interesting. And so, so we can get it down to that city level. Some of that is to protect, because you can also look at failure rates on charging events. Some of that is to protect the anonymity, but also some of that is to make it statistically relevant. Now, when we do the SOI benchmarking version, then someone will put in, okay, I'm in this county, and I want to know the counties that are most similar to me across the United States, using those 6 indicators that I talked about earlier that are most correlated with utilization rates. And then we'll spit back, okay, these 100 counties are very close to your county, and this is what the data looks like. The reason why we keep it at the county level is that there's so many individual site-specific dynamics that affect the success or lack of success of a charging location. If someone has to make a left-hand turn across traffic to get into your charging location, that has a big negative impact on your utilization rates. If it's very simple and someone makes a right-hand turn and it's very easy to get there and there's multiple entrance points, utilization rates go up. So by zooming out to the county level, we wash out all those anomalies and get statistically relevant data, and when we do it that way. So that someone can then put their county in, and then we can spit back throughout the United States. These are all the counties that are very similar to the county you're in on EV registration, on population density, on all those other key metrics. And then you can go in there and, like we talked about, start sub-segmentating to see, okay, I just want to see the C stores. I just want to see the ones that are near exit ramps or entrance ramps, or the ones that are near destination points or things like that. And then you can start seeing what's the average of all these people, how do they perform, so you can kind of get an estimation of what it's going to look like for you, or if you've already got a site, am I performing according to the average? Then we'll let you look at the top decile. Am I performing like the top tier people, or we look at the bottom decile? So you kind of know where you're sitting in that range. We really want to give people looking for a new station, kind of what they can project, but also, are you performing like you should be if you've already got a station, or do you need to figure out what you're doing wrong, or man, you're hitting way above the average and you're doing great. So, but to get that relevant data, on the benchmarking, we zoom into about county level, and when you slice and dice to look at utilization rates and other things, we go down to about the MSA level.
So just a quick clarification for those outside of the EV industry that may not be familiar with two terms. I'll start in order of how you mentioned them. Failure rate and utilization rate. What is failure rate and what is utilization rate?
Man, great question. Shame on me for just jumping into that. So the failure rate is if you plug your charger into the vehicle and the charging session does not work and it stops, that's a failure. If you plug your charger in and it goes for 5 seconds and then it stops, that's a failure. And then we even track how many attempts does it have. And if it's a one-time failure, but then the second time it works, we wash that one out. But if you go 2 or 3 times, and it keeps doing it, it's a failure. So it's failed charging sessions that you tried to do it and it didn't work.
Okay.
And that gets to the heart of that reliability and uptime. On utilization rate, if you look at the window of time that charger is available to be at use, some are 24 hours, some are less. It is what is the percentage or the time of that. So if it's being utilized 20% of the time, that's the amount of hours, depending on how many hours it's open, that it's being utilized. So we track the utilization rate, the percentage of time it's actually being utilized, because that means that's the percentage of time it's making money. And then we charge the number of sessions. And the reason why we break it down into those two different categories is if you are going to own that site and you're selling electrons, you care very deeply about the utilization rate.
Yeah.
You want to know how often it's being used and if it's in use making money. If you are someone that has said, you know what, I'm going to contract with Mercedes-Benz, I'm going to contract with EVgo, I'm going to contract with Tesla, they're going to come onto my site and I'm just going to focus on converting them in store. You don't care about the utilization rate, you care about the sessions. How many bites at the apple do you get to convert that person into the store and make a sale? So we track the number of sessions as well.
I was hoping you'd say with a failure rate, you also capture when people start kicking the actual dispensers after 3 or 4. How often does it, the bat comes out, whatever, when people start getting
oh man, there's
upset.
some stories.
Yes.
There's some stories.
So this program has different parts to it. Some are, hey, I'm really interested in EVs. I need to ramp up my knowledge. You have something for them. There are others where I've been doing this on my own, but I really need to understand how I'm doing against anybody else. And there's plenty of room for everybody in this program. And you want to just talk quickly about what are the opportunities for anybody thinking about or has a charger?
Yeah. Obviously, you can come in and if I'm going down the wrong road, corral me in the right direction here. But we have several layers of people that can utilize this for C-stores or for anyone that wants to be a site host, for that matter. You can come in and we have a free report that we put out, and that gives you broad-based information. It looks at a lot of the trends of what's happening on EV charging, EV registrations and the charger count, and the number of charging sessions, and the average utilization rates and things like that, and the average, what the highest days and the highest hour of usage across the United States. And we want to track those trends. We publish those on a biannual basis. Then you can go in and we try to pull out the most relevant data points and charts and graphs and trend lines that we think are germane to most people, especially medium-sized and smaller companies that don't want to pay and don't have a staff that can really get in there and dive into the analytics. And we crank out a report. And that's another level where they can come in and they can get this report, and it's going to be sent out quarterly, and then they can pay a little more and they can go into the website and they can play with it a little bit, but it's updated more often every month, and they can sub-segmentate a little bit to really maybe dial down to their area or something like that. And then for someone that wants to come in and wants full access, we have a full access version where they can drop their sites into the database and see what's around it, which, by the way, brings up a whole nother thing that we haven't discussed. We have a whole mapping suite that is a part of this program as well. So any retailer, once they start looking at their site and they've studied the charging and the utilization rates and the dwell times and the days of week and really gotten an understanding of what they think it's going to look like or what their site should be looking like, then they can go in. They can also drop their site on a big North American map that we have, or a location where they would like to build. Maybe it's a piece of land they have, or it's a site that they're thinking about converting. They can drop that into the map where they can look at where it is and then zoom in, and they can see, okay, these are where all the other chargers are around me, and a very detailed map. This is where all the businesses are, the restaurants, the dry cleaners, anything you want to look at that's near you to kind of figure out, well, these are the people that might pull and some of the other amenities around me. And then they can tap on that county and they can sit there and get all the key data points for that county to see what it looks like, the EV registration, the population, the demographic data, the housing type near there, because that's a big deal. If it's mainly businesses, they're going to charge in one way. It's people are going to be coming in during work hours and leaving, and really heavy presence in the morning and at lunchtime and after work. If you're in the middle of an apartment complex or condos, they're never going to be able to retrofit and put enough chargers in there for all the tenants. So they're going to need a public charger that's there all the time that they can rely on, and that's going to be their main source of charging. So you're going to get a heavy duty cycle on that one. And then you got suburban, which is a very different use. And then you've got obviously on highway corridors, which is another different use case. But the data points will give you all the relevant data that underlays all that, and you can get access to that. And that's the other thing that we didn't talk about.
Oh, I know. We'll have a part two. But first off, what I should have started out 25 minutes ago and said the reason we're talking is because of this new report that it is free on the Transportation Energy Institute's website, and the information is available to learn more. And then if you want to learn more than that, you can talk to Karl and see how to get involved. And what makes this possible is I've heard John Eichberger for years say that EVs are not really cars. They're just computers with wheels. And when your computers, basically all cars, I guess, are computers with wheels now, but EVs in particular, and they communicate a lot of information, which makes this program possible and allows for these millions of occasions to be collected every month. And I assume that at some point we're going to be talking tens of millions of occasions or hundreds of millions of occasions a month. So pretty exciting program. Where does somebody need to find out more information, Karl? Is it just best to go to the Transportation Energy Institute website or somewhere else?
So you can go to the Transportation Energy Institute website, and there's a charging analytics the charging analytics program landing page on the website, and you can sign up and get information. But also, if you're on the NACS website, we have an EV landing page, which is a phenomenal resource. There too, not only can you get the access to the charging analytics program, which will link you over to the TEI one, but it also gives you information on the EV Council, where we're bringing all the retailers to get together and rub shoulders and to share best practices and such. NACS has some phenomenal resources like the matchmaking list that we publish. It has a list of all the different vendors, from manufacturers to installers to people that do maintenance and software. And we make it very easy for everyone to find everyone. That's on there. But the easiest way to get that on the NACS website is we have an EV distribution sign-up list. And if you sign up for that, everything we put out, where to find the utilities, where to get the matchmaking list, the updates, and the free reports on the charging analytics program, those are all sent out via that NACS distribution list. And so that's another way to get all the information.
Well, there's a lot of data there, and you need the data, because you just can't have some guy say, hey, I can install a charger for you. That's probably not going to work out well unless you've done your homework. So, Karl, thanks for sharing some of the homework that you've been doing for our industry and moving us forward.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.